Hello and welcome everyone. This is Humans of Pharma platform by Pharma State Academy, which is focusing on different pharma stories based on any pharma career, one's pharma journey, current affairs, and book discussions. Today, I'll be taking you along for another inspirational pharma journey. This is the ninth episode of the Pharma Journey Series, Direct Say, where we will be having heart-to-heart discussions with pharma leaders. It is my pleasure to introduce you a distinguished leader with a remarkable career in the industry. Hariram Krishnan, sir. From humble beginnings, he faced the difficult decision between pursuing his master's degree and supporting his family. He ultimately chose to join Searle India as a medical representative, where he learned the necessary skills to succeed in the industry. Despite it is not his line of interest, Hariram sir has persevered a wonderful and inspiring journey from being a medical representative to managing director at Galderma India. Now, a certified executive coach from International Coach Federation USA and an active executive coach to CEOs, directors, senior and middle managers across sectors. Throughout his career, this leader honed his man management skills and human relationships with intuition and instinct. He read extensively on selling, marketing, training, managerial skills, which allowed him to analyze the situation from a correct perspective. This leader's achievements are the testament to his determination, resilience, and willingness to learn and adapt to new challenges. He's a valuable asset to any organization, and I, along with everyone who has been mentored by him, have no doubt that he will continue to excel in his future endeavors. On the behalf of Pharma State Academy and team, I am honored to have this leader with us today and look forward to hearing more about Hariram's journey and lesson he has learned along the way. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, Shasya, for the wonderful introduction. I think you are making me feel more humbled, right? More privileged and more honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for being here. Let's move on to know more about you through a series of questions. Beginning with the first one, starting your career as a medical representative was a challenge, especially since it was outside your line of interest and personality. Can you share more about the specific obstacles you faced, how you overcame that?
I think it's a pretty interesting journey, I must say. I think the first obstacle I must tell you was my own mindset and outlook towards the job in the pharma industry. Therefore, instead of talking about, the external, obstacles, let me first talk about myself. And I've shared this many times in many forums, and I always feel that it is something that I keep reminding myself, as a part of my own learning, was that, yes, there was certainly a family need, and therefore, then a responsibility, that I took made me to think that I must, take up a job. And probably out of the jobs that we had, the jobs that appeared to be, at least those days, certainly was medical reps job. Right. And in a good company, it certainly made a lot of difference. I think I was fortunate enough, to get in a good company. Those days, it was an American firm by name J.D. Searle and Co., which was in India called as Searle India Limited. Today, it is, RPG Life Sciences, because they bought this company in 87, 80. Obstacles, as I told, was my own mindset towards this kind of a job, because from the outside, at least those days, we were all definitely wearing ties. We were very proud to carry our bags, which was well polished, right? And we could speak science. We could speak a lot of medical science to the doctors. But the point was the mindset saying that, should I take up selling? Why did I take up selling? Should I meet the stockists? How do I manage chemists? The kind of traveling, that is required, etc. But fortunately, I think with the help of one of my industry mentors I had at that point of time, who silently continued to be my mentor for more than 35, 40 years. Unfortunately, he is no more now. So I owe a part of the change in my mindset. And from the stage where I used to think that ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा, I have to do this job, I said, I choose to do this job. The day my mind flipped into from have to and it said choose to, I think, the whole energy, the whole enthusiasm, the whole passion, right, unleashed and brought out the full potential in me to become one of, at least in my territory that I was working, which was a pretty large territory in Andhra Pradesh, one among the top 5 excellent MRs those days. Now, how this was established, I asked somebody to do a study asking about 20 doctors in my territory at that point of time, with all limited, things that we had. It was a common sense that made me to ask the doctors through one of my known persons, who are the 5 top representatives, doctor, come to your mind, when you want to recall them. And believe me, 95% of the doctors said 5 people, and I was one among them. So that told me, and I started my career at the age of 20 years. Bacha tha, typically bacha tha, right? And there were a lot of senior guys around, but that really gave me an enormous amount of courage and confidence that I'm doing the right things. I think, no turning back helped me. My manager was very helpful, and I think every single relationship professionally that I developed during the period of time, I think made a huge world of difference. And I'm very fortunate that I joined a company which had a large amount of therapy segments, right from cardiology, gynecology, gastroenterology, neurology, psychiatry. Wow, I think it was a wonderful base, I had no regrets of finally, deciding. And the fruits of that labor, Shazia, was by the end of 4 years, being recognized and then promoted at a very young age of 24 years.
Amazing to
I,
learn that.
I would therefore only put it, no outside obstacles. I don't want to use the word outside obstacles. I was the obstacle. My mind was the obstacle. The day I removed it, every single outside obstacle which appeared to be a challenge became an opportunity.
Really amazing to learn, and more than that, it's impressive how you're able to handle and see the obstacles. That's very impressive. Going on, uh, you are one of the people on LinkedIn who is never shy to share his thoughts. How do you stay such up to date with the industry trends and developments? And what strategies do you use to ensure that you and your team remain competitive and innovative?
First point, that I would answer to you is the last statement you made. You and my team. Hariram and his team is Hariram plus, Hariram plus, Hariram plus.
I'm new to this one. I'm new to this.
Yes, because there is nobody else in my team. I've got a lot of people whom I collaborate with, whom I work, where necessary, if I find that it would help, in terms of bringing them into the picture when I'm doing a mentoring or coaching, to a CEO. And when there is a request or a need from his organization for something, I would collaborate, with a set of people, whom I have enormous amount of respect, whom I have enormous amount of trust, and I know their skill levels and their knowledge levels, and therefore, I would rather, hand it over to them, the job. So that is the team, I would call. Otherwise, it is, Har- Hariram, Hariram plus, Hariram plus, Hariram. First thing is, I'm, a very keen learner. Almost every day, I do at least in a split way of 1 hour reading, And invariably, I keep in touch with those topics that I feel are relevant, for today. And plus, whenever, I am sitting, with the CEO, or when I'm mentoring or coaching somebody, I am equally learning from them. And that makes me stay very relevant and, on my feet. And therefore, if I don't update myself, if I am not relevant, I think the most dreadful thinking that I always get is I should not become obsolete. So it keeps me on my toes, and therefore I ensure that I stay on board with the contemporary requirements, and more importantly the relevant ones for day-to-day requirements of today, whether it is the manager, whether it is the leader, whether it is the organization, whether it is something to do with the technology that we are talking about, right? So that's what keeps me going, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I love it.
Really inspiring. And Ram, sir, with your experience working in various roles in the industry, from medical representative to managing director, what do you think are the key leadership lessons have you learned along the way?
That's a very good, very interesting point. I think the first thing I would tell Shazia is my basic foundation of being an effective manager first. Even before talking about or putting the word leader, the first thing I have always believed, and I continue to say this to everybody, that when we are leading a team, or when we are managing a team, or when we are managing a project, or when we are managing an organization, the first and the most important thing is being an effective manager. Now, when I use the word here, effective, I'm a great follower of Peter Drucker. And as he rightly puts it, effectiveness has something to do in terms of people. It is doing the right things. And the opposite of it is efficiency, which is connected, with resources, things, time, etc. And therefore, it is doing the things right. So for me, effectiveness comes first, with a right proportion of combination of efficiency. That was the first starting point. And therefore, my foundation of being an effective manager, the first experience learning that I had, or the experiential learning that I had, was when I was the frontline manager of the organization. Right? For 4 years from Andhra Pradesh, I was promoted as a frontline manager to Kerala. Right. And I had a team of my ex-colleagues who were representatives, and their average age was 42 years, and Hariram was only 24 years, exactly the opposite. So I realized that I have to be effective if I have to survive, grow, develop, succeed, and lead the team successfully. That was the foundational starting point. The second line management that I went into further strengthened me into becoming an effective manager, but it also helped me in terms of moving towards the leadership requirements. And I always say one thing: leader is not a title. Behind that, the word leadership that we call is a behavioral aspect. And therefore, it has got everything to do with the softer aspects of the skills. Whereas the managerial aspects, to a large extent, is relating to the hardware part of it. What you talk in terms of planning, organizing, scheduling, monitoring, controlling, follow-up. Whereas the leadership is something to do with the behavioral aspects. And that second line management gave me enough opportunities to help me to hone these requirements. And I always believed in one thing, that leadership is close to being credible. So it was the question of, the credibility that I had to build. And the best way, according to me, the currency of leadership in building credibility is you've got to walk the talk. You've got to be a role model. Don't just, blah, blah, blah to people, please show it to them, lead the way, work along with them, and develop them, add value to them. That's what, is what I learned. And subsequently, it was all building up further. And then, a stint in marketing, etc., gave a better exposure. And obviously, all these came very handy, all these experiences, when I then, took the journey to being a managing director and heading an organization. So this is what I would say, it is. And therefore, it is not, merely using, bombastic words. No point in using jargons. You got to really live everything through.
Very well, sir. And it's really important how we all need to evolve our management style over time. It's really needed to be. With that, my next transitioning to a new and unfamiliar situation can be daunting. Can you tell us about a time when you had to do this within the industry and how you have approached it?
That's a very interesting point, because generally what people think when I meet, the managers or the current, generation of, pharma people, they always think that, I was dropped, from the sky as a managing director. they, they don't realize, what we have traversed through. How many times I would have fallen down, I do not know. And as they rightly say, it's not just falling down. So your success lies in getting up. How many times I would have been hurt? How many toxic managers, with whom I have worked? And how do you still manage to keep yourself afloat, survive, learn, grow, develop? So one of the major obstacles I still remember that I had was an opportunity was given to me by the company that I was working in called Crosslens, where a new division was launched. And this division had excellent, a range of portfolio of products, including they had a JV with Galderma at that point of time. That was my first touch point, with Galderma, right? But from a distance, absolutely from a distance as a JV partner. And I was heading the company. I was working in Crosslands. And after about 1.5, 2 years, when the company, after launch, when they found, that things were not happening the way it has got to happen, I was given the project of go to South, first to turn it around, make sure, that you make a success of it. You do it 9 months. After that, we bring you back as a national sales manager to Mumbai back again. I was in Mumbai. Therefore, go to South, sit down in Chennai, work for whole South, turn it around, come back. I tell you, for a few minutes, I was wondering, am I, have I heard them, correctly? I was telling my wife, I said, I think these guys, really want to finish me off, it looks like. That's why they have given me this task. She said, no, they want you to grow. That's why they have given you. She was pretty understanding. She understood very well. Sometimes, she's a great mentor for me. I bounce to her, right? And I don't know how many of them know how to utilize your spouse as a great human resource, right? And I took the responsibility, right? Went through, the stay. First, I always say one thing. First thing, when you enter into a new arena and you know that you have a challenge in front of you, please first become curious. Don't go with trepidation. Don't go with fear. Even if you had that, please become explorative. Please become curious. So the first 1 month, I only went all around to understand what is happening and what is not happening. Then I sat down for one day, came back. We had an office in Chennai, sat down and decided that these are going to be my three priorities: people related, marketing related, and selling system and process related. And I decided to work on each one of this in a very systematic manner with no ad hocism anywhere, changing, everything the way it is required, helping people to understand very clearly, clarifying the expectations that are there, and telling them that I am there to help them to fulfill the expectations. And still, after all that, if somebody did not want to realize or change themselves to adapt to a newer situation, I had no option except to tell them, sorry, my dear friend, right? We have an objective in front of us. And therefore, if we are not able to align with this objective, I think, we will have to part ways as friends. And I did not hesitate to bring a new talent, new potential, and made the whole team, successful, and was able to bring that division into a growth path in that particular territory. By the end of 9 months, the company kept up the promise and made me the national sales manager. And believe me, that was an excellent experience that I had in terms of how do you turn around a difficult situation. I've spent sleepless nights. I have traveled, like mad. But every single thing I did, I was very sure every morning I would get up wherever I am and make sure that my objective for the day is very, very, very clear. And I would do that. And I worked with each and every individual in the whole zone that I was working with. Right. And almost I have covered all the major territories. This has been my strength. I have always believed go to the marketplace, you know what's happening, and be at the sharp end, where required. So this is what I would say, very simple. I'm not an armchair executive.
Approach here is really wonderful, Hariram sir. Really wonderful. And since you talked in between about the mentor part, so here's the question for that. How important do you think mentorship is in the pharma industry, and how have you been benefited from having a mentor or being a mentor yourself? Since you talk about your wife as a mentor.
See, I think, Shazia, you're bringing a very, very important point, which is very relevant in today's context. But I still find, I am sorry to say this, most of the pharma companies and leadership still do not understand the value of mentorship or mentoring. So, since they don't want to be mentored, they also do not provide, this facility to the people who are in the organization. And to a large extent, I would like to also add, if at all they try to bring a coach or a mentor, unfortunately, there is a tag attached to it that that person is being brought in that role, but he is brought more as a surrogate manager. And that's where the whole dilution takes place, because he becomes a spokesperson of the top leadership. Right. I am fortunately, in my career of that, as I told you, 35 years, I had an external person who was my mentor. He was my friend, he was my philosopher, he was my guide, he was my coach. We didn't know the word of coach and mentor those days, but we certainly knew a philosopher, a guide, a person, whom you could cry upon, when he would lend his shoulder, he would lend his ears. And this is where I took up that interest that the day I'm going to superannuate or retire, I'm going to do this and not again get into any other operational areas. And today, I'm very proud and I'm very happy to tell you that I deal with more than 10 CEOs as a mentor, as well as when required as a coach. And and fortunately, it is not just pharma. Today, I am an industry agnostic person. I deal with variety of sectors which I'm unaware of, I have not known, but today I have understood, the challenges of those sector, and I cut across, seamlessly. I thoroughly enjoy, this cross-sectional approach, that I'm doing.
One have to put it in two words, I would say prominent and stabilizing advice. Seriously. Moving on. The next question would be, how do you think the industry academia interface can be strengthened, and what initiatives have you been involved in to promote this collaboration?
Before that, when I was actively into my seat as managing director, I was also executive committee member of OPPI, right, which was largely, R&D based, companies that were members. And I headed various committees at that point of time. I have headed the marketing committee. I've headed the first initiative that was taken. The then president, Mr. Ranga Iyer, who took this initiative, who was at that time the managing director of Wyeth, and he formed, the Salesforce Effectiveness Committee, and I headed this as a chairman. And with a team of people, I think we were able to bring in a lot of things, initiatives that we could bring in. And one of the initiatives that we brought in was working with the academia. Similarly, when I was heading the HR committee, we did a lot of work with the academia. And we also did one thing, that we promoted to various colleges, including pharmacy colleges. And one of the persons who took this initiative and who brought us into the picture was Mr. Ranjit Shahani, who was the then president of OPPI, who was also the managing director at that point of time of Novartis. We touched many colleges, many students, and discussed with them, and then showcased that pharma industry could be an employer of choice, and that there is enough scope for people, to grow, right, in this industry, and a lot of opportunities are available. And post this, I must tell you that even today, I am, invited to talk in various colleges. I have done quite a few of interactions with NMIMS final year pharma MBA students. Those days when Mr. Tarun Gupta, the late Mr. Tarun Gupta, was heading, the function in NMIMS, in the pharma MBA, he used to invite me to talk to the students as to why it is important for them to take up at least the first 2 years of pharma selling as a career before they would like to enter into the pharma marketing part. Right. So I continue to do this even today. I still feel we have a long way to go. There is more engagement that has got to be brought in between academia and industry. And what is very important is, I always believe that when they gave me an opportunity to address the students for 2 hours, I would talk for only 1 hour. I would request them to interact with me by asking questions for 1 hour. Because they have so many unanswered questions in their minds. It is very important. I would say we need to do more of this.
Truly, there it is, Hariram sir, that this is what we require in the long term. uh, and the next question, I am going to ask a little personal ones. What do you like to do in your free time? And how do you balance work and personal life?
But I don't know what is personal and professional life. For me, both are integrated. And the victim of this is my spouse. Though she doesn't grumble about it. It's not that, I ignore. For example, one of the best pastime for me, if I have a free time, is sitting on social media. And posting all the relevant stuff that I love. Now, beyond this, I would like to tell you the most important part of the free time that I have, which I always enjoy every morning, is that 15 or 20 minutes I have quality time, with my wife over a cup of coffee the first thing in the morning, a typical South Indian filter coffee. Probably we catch up with a lot of things at that point of time. And today I have an advantage that there are certain assignments or engagements I'm able to mix and match both virtual as well as being there face to face. So it certainly gives me therefore more time for me to do it. And invariably I spend time watching some movies with my wife in the nights. Now obviously I do spend time in USA because my daughter son-in-law now have a newer attraction in terms of a grandson. So when I'm there, we spend a lot of time without sacrificing, my time, for engagements. And thanks to the side effect of COVID that people have accepted when I'm US to connect with me virtually and still get the best that is required. Right. And maybe I still have the hobby of writing. Probably there are quite a few content that I create, which I sit down first write, and then I probably post it. So that's another thing that I enjoy. And I for me, even when I'm coaching somebody or mentoring, I consider it as a free time of mine, and it's my passion. I love it. So there is no great division that I try to bring in.
And more to this, Hariram sir, can you tell us about a book or movie that has a significant impact on your life or career? Basically, how you handle your stress and pressure, maintain your focus and resilience, anything.
Very difficult question to answer, but let me try to. The the book that first influenced me those days when I was a medical rep was what many would endorse. Dale Carnegie's How to Influence Friends and Win People. Starting point was that. I think at a later stage, I would say, one of the books that really impressed me was this chap by name Alvin Toffler, who wrote the book, The Future Shock. And one of the famous quotes that I always keep quoting everywhere and I keep quoting to myself is, from that book, is the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it is always there in my head. Right. So how to stay relevant, therefore, what to drop out of the past prejudices or biases that I have had. So that's one. The other book that have really influenced me quite a lot is Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Many fundamentals and basics, even today, I keep going back and revisiting a page or a particular section to align myself with what I require from that book. And from the point of view of leadership, the book that has really helped me, one is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the other one is by the chap by name David Rock, who wrote the book called Quiet Leadership. And there is a lot of coaching related points that I have taken from there. And one another person, and maybe some of his books, I would say, that have been a great influencer to me is Marshall Goldsmith. And one book which I really love, What Got You Here, significant. There are so many, I keep reading, and none of the books I have completed fully, I can be honest. There are more than 2,000 and odd physical books at home, and there are another 2,000 and odd books on my Kindle. None of them I have completed fully, I can tell you.
Beyond that, everyone who is hearing this should keep it as an everyday mantra. Read, 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 I guess. Okay, wonderful it is. Lastly, here we come to an end, and the words of wisdom to anyone who is here listening and learning from you, Hariram.
Okay, three things that I would say. The first thing I would say is the secret of success is constancy to purpose. And I strongly believe that a definite sense of purpose adds a very strong motivation in making most of your abilities. So, do you have a sense of purpose? If you have, then it is helpful. The next one that I always say is problems are opportunities in workloads. And I strongly believe in that in every single situation that I go through, even today. The third one that I say, unlike many others who would keep talking about, wo zamane mein, those days, it was like that. I believe in only one statement made by this chap, Jim Rohn. This time, like all times, is but a good one if you and I know what to do with it.
You have put it wonderfully, and that too in very simple words, really. Wonderful. And so, with that, we come to an end. And I wanted to thank you, Hariram sir, for your presence and for taking time out of your busy schedule. This is a treat to every pharma student and pharma professional and anyone who is required to have a change and more than that, motivation in their career. And everyone who is watching, I hope you enjoy this episode. Reach out if you have any suggestion for future episodes by connecting with us on LinkedIn and other social media channels at Humans of Pharma or email us at humansofpharma@pharmastate.com. Bye and thank you so much.
Thank you, Shazia. I think it was a pleasure, talking to you. I hope some of the wisdom that I would have shared would certainly touch more lives. And as ever, I always tell this, as Hariram Krishnan, I am available on Facebook, I am available on LinkedIn. And therefore, I don't mind sharing what little I know. And if I could touch some lives in some way, I would be more than happy. And I will continue to keep also learning from others. Thanks a lot. All the best. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.